If you're thinking about buying a home in Halifax in 2026, I want to start with a simple question. Do you actually know how much cash you need to close? Not your down payment, not your monthly mortgage, but the total amount of money required to actually get you the keys to your future home. Because every single year, I watch smart, disciplined buyers get blindsided, not because they weren't responsible, but because no one laid out the full picture to clearly explain what closing costs are. And the truth is, in Nova Scotia, the closing costs can be the difference between a confident purchase and a stressful one. So today, I'm gonna break this down properly. Real numbers, real examples, and I'll share a scenario about a woman named Sarah and how she might have lost her home over this exact issue. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to expect and how to position yourself properly in the Halifax market in 2026. Let's start with what most buyers obsess over. It's obviously the down payment here. And don't get me wrong, it's important. Saving 5%, 10%, 20%, or even more of a $500,000 home is not an easy task to achieve. It takes discipline, it takes time, and for first-time home buyers or relocators coming to Halifax, it often feels like the biggest hurdle to overcome. But here's the mistake that I see all the time. Buyers think that once they have all the funds for their down payment, that they're ready and good to go. We need to pause here just for a moment because that's not entirely true. The down payment is only one piece of this equation. It's the big piece, don't get me wrong, but still, I'd rather have the whole pie instead of just one piece when buying a home. Now, across most of Nova Scotia and the Halifax Regional Municipality, HRM, we have something called a deed transfer tax. This tax is not a flat rate, it changes, and it's 1.5% of the purchase price of your future home, and it's due at closing time. Let me put that into some real numbers here for you, just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. On a $500,000 home, this tax is $7,500. On a $600,000 home, that's $9,000 that you're looking at for this tax. On a $750,000 home, you're looking at $11,250. And that money is not rolled into your mortgage, it's not optional, it's not negotiable, it's due. And we jokingly call this in the industry the welcome to Nova Scotia tax. Just to speak more bluntly, it's essentially the government saying, welcome to your new property, now pay up. But there's nothing funny about discovering that number 2 weeks before closing if you didn't budget for it properly. Now, let's layer that into other costs for what we're talking about. Just because the deed transfer tax is your biggest expense doesn't mean that there aren't other fees, such as your lawyer fees, which is typically going to be around $1,500. Could be more if you call them more frequently than normal, but that's again dependent on the complexity of the deal. But usually I tell my clients to prepare about $1,500 for legal fees. You should absolutely get a home inspection, and I rarely see homes where buyers skip this condition, and that's usually going to cost you between $500 and $800. That range, again, it really depends on a few add-ons that you have, but if you're willing to do just a standard inspection, look for around $500, but if you're doing something like a well and water test, you could be looking at closer to $1,000. There's things like title insurance, there's property tax adjustments, which can vary significantly depending on what time of year you purchase your home. And sometimes, you need surveys or appraisals. There's moving costs with a truck and movers, utility hookups to get connected with Nova Scotia Power. And there's other small real world expenses that just come up immediately after you purchase a home. And when you add up everything together, the closing costs in Halifax typically land between 2 and 3% of the purchase price of your future property. Don't forget, these services, you'll need to add on HST to these percentages. So that means on a home that's $600,000, you could realistically need between $12,000 and $18,000 just to make sure you have enough money for your closing costs. And this is where buyers feel pressure. So let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah had worked incredibly hard to save her 5% for the down payment for a beautiful semi-detached home in Dartmouth. Let's say in this scenario, the purchase price of her home is $520,000. She had her pre-approval, her savings lined up, and let's say she found the perfect place. Everything was checked off. She had an accepted offer. She was thrilled. Talking about paint colors, planning where her garden would go. Just again, she was on cloud 9. And then, about 2 weeks before closing, her lawyer sends her a statement of adjustments. The deed transfer tax alone was $7,800. Add in legal fees, title insurance, property tax adjustments, and her totals were close to just over $12,000. She had budgeted around $5,000 for this type of closing costs. Now, some people would be furious about this unexpected charge, but she wasn't angry, she was embarrassed. She felt like she had done something wrong, like she had missed something obvious, but she hadn't. No one had clearly explained to her the full structure of these expenses. For my clients, I want to make sure we review my home buyer guide before we even go out looking at homes. And this sets expectations for everyone. And I have there a section of these expenses and closing costs, so we're prepared from day one. My mortgage brokers, they also make a note of the closing costs when going through a client's file to make sure that they don't overspend and aren't house poor. I don't want any of my clients to feel house poor. Guess what? We figure it out, we explore options, and we move accordingly with strategy. Now, in this scenario, it's exactly what I don't want happening to you. I don't want anyone to be like Sarah to get this bill at closing costs. And it's even more important now in 2026 because the Halifax market is stabilizing. And we're not in this frantic, no condition, 24-hour chaos that we were a few years ago. Homes are sitting longer, conditions are being accepted again, buyers have more breathing room. That's a good thing. But stabilization, it doesn't eliminate costs. It just gives you more time to prepare properly. And this is where I see the biggest difference between a confident buyer and a stressed buyer. Confident buyers, they understand their numbers before they start shopping for homes and seeing what's out there in the market. They know their down payment, they have that on lock. They know their closing costs. Again, once you have a budget for a down payment, you know exactly what that deed transfer tax is gonna be, and they have an emergency buffer zone just in case things come up. Stressed buyers, they stretch to the maximum of their approval and they just hope everything lines up properly. And hope is not strategy, preparation is. And here's the approach that I recommend for all of my Halifax buyers in 2026. Step 1, determine your purchase price range, your pre-approval and your comfort zone for your budget. Those are two very different numbers. And unless you find the dream home for the rest of your life, I recommend you never go above your comfort zone with your budget. Step number 2, we're gonna calculate the down payment. So meeting with my recommended mortgage brokers will certainly help out here and make sure that you're just a cut above the rest. Step 3, multiply the purchase price by at least 2.5% and treat that as your closing cost reserve. If you really want to feel completely comfortable, instead of doing 2.5, use 3% or even 4%. Then, and this is crucial, maintain an emergency fund separate from that because home ownership doesn't end at closing. Within the first year of ownership, something almost always comes up that you want to change. It might be small, it might not be urgent, but it's usually something. I've had clients, they've replaced hot water tanks within 2 months of possession. In my own home, I needed to replace my HVAC system entirely. Sometimes you just don't like the paint colors and you need to get something at a Canadian Tire. But if you close with zero buffer, those moments, they feel catastrophic. If you close with margins, then they feel a bit more manageable. that margin changes your entire experience of home ownership. There are layers here where most buyers don't consider. Mortgage qualifications and liquidity. Just because a lender says you qualify doesn't mean that you should stretch yourself to the maximum number of your budget for your pre-approval. If you empty your savings account to close, you may technically qualify, but you're exposed here. And when buyers feel financially exposed, they make emotional decisions. They make rush inspections. They make panic during the negotiations. They avoid asking for repairs because they're scared that the deal might fall apart. Financial comfort gives you negotiation strength, and negotiation strength, it protects your equity. If you're relocating to Halifax, this is even more important because every province structures things slightly differently. Ontario has its own land transfer tax model. Alberta operates differently. Buyers moving to Nova Scotia often assume certain costs. When Nova Scotia goes over what to expect, then you feel more confident and the costs are clear and upfront. Knowing that ahead of time is what separates a smooth move from a stressful one. So what does this mean for you? It means in 2026, it's a strategic opportunity here, but only for prepared buyers. If you budget properly, understand your closing costs, and build margins to fit your plan, you'll move with confidence. If you guess, then you'll feel it in more ways than one. And I don't want any of my clients guessing on anything. If you're planning to buy in Halifax in the next 6 to 12 months, I want to help you with a stress-free move. My information is below in the description of this video. I'll send you my home buyer's guide, which breaks down these costs by price range so you can see the real numbers before you start shopping. And if you want weekly breakdowns of Halifax real estate, not just hype or not just fear, but focused on strategy, make sure you subscribe to my channel because buying smart in 2026 isn't about rushing. It's about understanding the full picture here. And when you understand the full picture, you win. That's the real life realtor approach to getting you the keys to your future home.